Connections Radio presents.
So this is a video that's going to be a little bit different on this channel, but I'm keeping my word on one thing that I did back in September. I made a promise, and I'm going to be delivering on it. Now, yes, it says Vegas Hockey Hub. Our YouTube channel says Vegas Hockey Hub, and we're uploading it on the PR Connections Radio YouTube channel and all their social medias. But this is the WrestleMania 41 recap. Now, let me take you back for just a quick second. Back in September, as we were getting ready for the NHL season, as we were getting ready to talk about everything, I made a video where I said that if I had an opportunity to go watch WrestleMania 41 here in Las Vegas, that I would then turn on my video, make this and upload it to YouTube, and say what my recap was of WrestleMania 41. Now, that was back in September. All right. In fact, if I recall correctly, it was, yes, September 23rd is when I made that video talking about WrestleMania, talking about Las Vegas, and the fact that it was going to be here. I didn't think anything of it. But then after having enough people bring this up to me, and I had enough people recall the fact that I did in fact make this video saying that I would do a recap show if I was going to go to WrestleMania. Here it is. This is our WrestleMania 41 recap show. We're going to break down both days. Now, here's a disclaimer. I attended day one. Okay? Day one, I was at there. I was at the event, Allegiant Stadium. The traffic was absolutely horrid. All right, it took me so long to get to Allegiant Stadium, park, walk over, be at the event, and then it took forever to get back and get in my car and then drive home. I mean, geez, the event ended at around 8? I think that's what it was, around 8 p.m., and it took me until almost 9:30 for me to finally get back. And because I'm not going to tell you where I live in Vegas, but I live not close to Allegiant Stadium, but that's besides the point. So this is going to be your official WrestleMania 41 recap because I'm a man of my word, and I said I was going to do this if I was at the event. Now, getting into the WrestleMania 41 itself, I do want to say that the stage was nice. I did like the presentation, the display of everything, and the fact that they even had seats inside the stage itself. I kind of wondered how much that cost to be in the stage itself. And when it came to the presentation, there was some pyro for certain wrestlers, and this was a fun event. And if you're a diehard wrestling fan, if you're someone who took their time and took their travel and went down to Las Vegas and was here for the 2-day, regardless if it was Saturday or if it was Sunday, I will say if you had a fun, if you were there and you enjoyed yourself, you had your drinks and your food and the entertainment aspect of it, that is fantastic. Now, I am going to make a statement here. Growing up as a kid, I loved wrestling. I loved back in the day, the era of, guys like Eddie Guerrero and Edge and Christian, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho. That's kind of what my era was when it came to wrestling when I watched it. Now, WrestleMania Day 1, I was not up to date with every single person that was on the card, but I did keep up with certain wrestlers, but that's probably because they've been there long enough. But this should be a fun video nonetheless, just to recap what happened. So to kick off WrestleMania 41, Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Paul Levesque, whatever you want to call him, he went out, he addressed the crowd. He said, thanks to everybody, kind of welcoming WrestleMania 41. Then you had the introduction and everything. Really good. Like I said, the presentation for WWE is spectacular. That's one thing about wrestling that I will always give credit to. They are a top-notch production company, and they bring it every single time. To start out, you had the World Heavyweight Championship. You had Gunther and you had Jey Uso, and the crowd was really behind Jey Uso. He is a fan favorite here in the WWE. And, this was a really solid match. I really like what we saw from Jey Uso. There was some good offense, some good defense. There were some good moves that were displayed between Gunther and Jey Uso. And at the end, there was, some good offense displayed by Jey Uso. And after some powerful moves by him, he would end up winning the match. And then he celebrated with his brother, Jimmy Uso. And they went into the crowd for a little bit. They celebrated, with the audience. And for the people that like Jey Uso, for the people that are fans of Jey Uso, it was probably a feel-good moment to see him do that. Only about 15 minutes, it felt like the match was, between 15, 20 minutes. Not bad for the World Heavyweight Championship. And for it being a world title to open up WrestleMania, it did make sense once you got to the main event. And the fact that you had 3 solidified superstars that were in the main event, I guess it did make sense then to have the opening match be the world title. But you know what? It was a solid match. I will say that. I'm not going to do a grade. I'm not going to do a ranking system. I'm going to say that it was a solid match. It was a match you can go back and watch a few months later if you are a wrestling fan, or if you ever want to go for the archives and watch a WrestleMania world title match. This is a match you could probably go back and watch. It was fun. It was a fun match between Gunther and Jey Uso. And I like to see, the fan favorites celebrating with the fans. So at Allegiant Stadium, made the fans happy. And it was a title change because Gunther walked out. He had the title, and then Jey Uso didn't have the title, but he walked out with it. So that was a fun match. It was fun to watch. And I will say that Allegiant Stadium, the presentation, everything, I like that. So Jey Uso beating Gunther, that was fun to see. Now, getting into the second match itself, you had the War Raiders, which, the Las Vegas Raiders, Allegiant Stadium. You had a team named the War Raiders. I guess, that's the appeal there. They dressed up as characters from, I think Clash of Clans. I believe that's what it was. As you can see, I have no idea, but they were dressed up in a certain costume. And then New Day, who Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, they've been around long enough. I know who those guys are. Kofi Kingston, I'm watching him, when I was, a teenager around there in wrestling. Kofi Kingston, always good to see him at a WrestleMania. Dressed up, kind of in an anime, comic book, character type uniforms. And for the World Tag Team titles for WWE. And you know what? It was a solid match. I think it was about 10 minutes long. And, they kept on focusing on a guy's neck. He probably had a neck injury around there. But they were focusing on all of that, watching the match. And, New Day, Xavier Woods, and Kofi Kingston, they end up winning this match. And it wasn't until doing research I realized it's their first ever win at WrestleMania as a tag team. So good for them. They walked down the ramp. They celebrated. They had fun there. And, good match in the tag team division for WrestleMania. So Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, and they beat the War Raiders. So the team named War Raiders, losing in the Raiders Stadium at Allegiant Stadium. Not the way that I probably thought it would have gone. But you know what? That's okay. That's fine and dandy. And this is a good tag team match, a good match to have in the middle, between everything that was going on there. And for WrestleMania Day 1 at Allegiant Stadium, they had 2 matches in. They had the World Heavyweight Championship to kick that off. Then you had the World Tag Team Champions to be second after that. And, when it came to WrestleMania, it was a good startup. I understood that the first day of WrestleMania was supposed to be not as strong as the second day, but still it was fun to watch this and kind of be there live and see this match itself. And once again, it's always the presentation that kind of is outstanding in WWE. It was kind of shock and awe to see how much that goes into day-to-day production with WWE. And then the next match after that, you had Jade Cargill and you had Naomi. And Jade Cargill, they had this presentation for the match. Weather Channel they had a meteorologist kind of explain, her character and everything. They had, this nice package ahead of time. So that was kind of cool from the presentation perspective of it. She came out, she had this attire on, and then Naomi, they had caution and everything there. So that was kind of cool to see Naomi and Jade Cargill. Once again, about a 10-minute match between the two. And, not really much I can say except, for Naomi, she seems like the kind of veteran that, is helping a rookie, a young up-and-coming wrestler there. But for Jade Cargill, I will say that it was, fun seeing her win this match and seeing her, be at WrestleMania at Allegiant Stadium. So, yeah, Jade Cargill beating Naomi, about, 5-10 minute match. But, for the story that they were trying to tell, to have the, fan favorite win over the sad situation there. So, overall, that match did not happen, did not last as long, but it was still kind of a fun match to watch, about good, a couple minutes at Allegiant Stadium. But, yeah, Jade Cargill beating Naomi. It was, it was a all right match. It was kind of, just a solid WrestleMania match to kind of have in the middle. And then after that was a match for the United States Championship. And first off, it was Jacob Fatu. Nice mask, by the way. Really appreciate, people who do, kind of throwbacks and stuff like that. So he came out with Solo Sikoa, the whole bloodline. A couple of months ago, you had the OG bloodline. Then you had, Solo Sikoa, Roman Reigns. Solo Sikoa was on the side with, Jacob Fatu. So, at least, kind of being a manager out there with Solo Sikoa, and then Jacob Fatu being this match, trying to win the United States Championship. And then LA Knight. So I understand that we are a Vegas Hockey Hub and the Vegas Golden Knights, but, it's kind of cool to see, LA Knight being out there at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. He kind of showed up in a Maserati, and he had a driver. He came out of the car and then walked down to the ring. So at least, that's a cool presentation part of it. Now, match-wise, this was a good quality match. This was a good quality match. I kind of put it on that same tier as the Gunther Jey Uso match. I mean, there were some good quality spots in there. There was a spot in the match where Jacob Fatu, he goes up to the top rope. He does a backflip, and then LA Knight hits his finisher while in midair. Jacob Fatu, he kicks out. But I will say the athleticism of Jacob Fatu, and if I recall correctly, Jacob Fatu, he has been here in Las Vegas. He's done independent shows in the past. Solo Sikoa, he's done independent shows in the past here in Las Vegas. And to see Jacob Fatu at the end, he hits his finisher. He ends up beating LA Knight, and he wins the United States Championship. And it was a solid match. I mean, this was a good back and forth there. Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, they go down the ramp. Jacob Fatu as the United States champion. And we'll be interested to see how Jacob Fatu goes on moving forward. Has a bright future in the company and in wrestling. LA Knight, an established veteran. He's been around for a while. But, this is kind of the tone of WrestleMania Day 1. That it felt like, every champion walked out on their back and the challenger hoisted their championship belt over their head walking out of Allegiant Stadium, and kind of saw that theme there. Gunther was the champion. Jey Uso walks out as champion. The War Raiders were the champion, and New Day walked out as champion. And then with this one, you had, LA Knight came in as champion, and Jake Fatu walks out as champion. So, that was kind of the tone to set that up. And, a few matches into the card, and so far up to that point, there was some solid matches. There were some okay matches, but there really hadn't been any great matches yet up to that point. But there was supposed to be about 2 matches left in the card. So for WrestleMania Day 1 out there at Allegiant Stadium, outside of me being there and having a good time, it was a WrestleMania that had some good spots in it, and it was fun, if you were there at Allegiant. Now, getting into the final 2 matches, there was this brief match that happened between El Grande Americano, a.k.a. Chad Gable in a mask. And, I will say presentation-wise, they had, as much as people wanted to say that this was going to be, El Grande Americano versus Rey Mysterio, he got injured before the match. So Rey Fénix would be in his place. And as somebody who is a fan of Chad Gable, I've seen, highlights of him on and off, his talent in the ring. And it did kind of get spotlighted. You kind of see Chad Gable do some spots, the lucha style of wrestling, the Mexican culture of wrestling. And for what it was an okay match. It was going to be a couple of minutes long. I think that because they had to change wrestlers, in between, that had to do like kind of a change up on the fly. I think the match, it was okay. And, at the end of the match, El Grande Americano, he puts a metal plate in his mask. Rey Fénix does a move on top rope. He hits him in the head with the metal plate with the mask. And then, he does a flying headbutt. And then he picks up the 1, 2, 3. Like I said, it was an okay match. I kind of feel like this was just a match that they kind of had to change up and kind of move stuff around. But for what it was an okay match at WrestleMania Day 1. Kind of disappointing that Chad Gable, El Grande Americano, wasn't unmasked afterwards. That's kind of what I was hoping for. Personally, I was kind of hoping that all the other luchadors would, meet him at the stage entrance. And then after a while, him getting beaten up by all the other luchadors, then there would be a sequence where like his mask would kind of, come off and they would unveil that it was Chad Gable. But, for what it was an okay match. Now, getting into the semi-main event, and you had Charlotte Flair and, of course, daughter Ric Flair. She's a multi-time women's champion. And, her attire, it seemed cool. I'll say the presentation, everything, she has that going for her. And then Tiffany Stratton, who is the current women's champion, she came out, kind of, Barbie doll presentation. And, I guess, the gimmick and everything, that's cool. It was a cool presentation to start out the match. Now, this kind of, unfortunately, the chemistry between the two, I don't know if there was miscommunications. I don't know if there were, botches during the match or what it was. But throughout the match, it kind of seemed like there were some stumbles, like some things just did not click during the match. I'm not going to accuse any of the two women's wrestlers of like trying to sabotage the match itself. But it just, there were some uncomfortable moments where it just seemed like there was just, not on the same page for a WrestleMania match between Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton. But, for what it was a good 15, 20-minute match. Charlotte Flair, being the veteran, she kind of puts over the young, up-and-coming Tiffany Stratton. She retains the championship. So that was like the first time during this WrestleMania 41 that somebody walked out with the championship that they brought in. But, it was a cool kind of, passing the torch kind of moment. Charlotte Flair being that veteran for over a decade. Tiffany Stratton, she only been in the business for a couple of years, and she gets her WrestleMania moment. So, what? Happy for her. That's good to see. And it'll kind of be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Now, I understand that they also were having announcements on the Titantron and everything that WrestleMania next year will be in NOLA, be in New Orleans. So that's good for them. New Orleans having a WrestleMania. So that would be cool for the people out there in Louisiana. And before getting into the main event of WrestleMania Night 1, they were showing, highlight packages of what was going to happen in Day 2. Now, for anybody who's wondering what the coverage of Day 2 is going to be, because I was not there, I was actually at the Palms for a watch party for like the first couple of matches before I had to go to the playoff hockey for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's not going to be as in-depth, but I did go back and watch WrestleMania 41 for research purposes But that's the reason why this is kind of longer for day one, because I was there and I was actually watching it in real time. But, it's main event time of day one for WrestleMania 41. And you had 3 of the best wrestlers in the world competing in the main event. So to really start this out, the entrances were spectacular. The pyrotechnics, the presentation. This is A+++++. As somebody who, by the way, cares a lot about presentation, and I do notice certain things when it comes to editing and stuff like that, this was spot on. I loved what WWE did here. Now, to start this out, you had Seth Rollins, who came out, looked like he was in like a trash bag, but it was a flamethrower, a freaking flamethrower for Seth Rollins. He's doing all that and everything like that. And then when he comes out, the lights go out, he comes back, and he is wearing all white attire for Seth Rollins. And for the guy who is called, the Visionary, highlight package and everything right there. This guy, actually one of my favorite wrestlers, when I was, full-time wrestling fan when I was a teenager. I was a huge Seth Rollins fan when I was watching it every single Monday and Friday and Sunday and stuff like that. So it was always really cool to see Seth Rollins. And even if there wasn't playoff hockey on Sunday, I, would have loved to go see Seth Rollins at a WrestleMania in person. Kind of one of the main reasons I wanted to watch this on day one for WrestleMania 41, despite the obligation and keeping my word about making a WrestleMania recap here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And then after that, you had Roman Reigns. All right. You had my tribal chief. All right. And you know what? Vegas Hockey Hub, I acknowledge Roman Reigns as my tribal chief. And by the way, I appreciate the Jordans that he had on. I am not a sneakerhead by any means, but I will always appreciate a nice sneaker. And a kind of will note that I will mention is that they had his family and the Samoan heritage kind of like displayed in the presentation. And that was always nice. The fact that, the Samoan family and really the bloodline that Roman Reigns is a part of, that was a nice touch there. But hands down, the best presentation was CM Punk. Now, am I going to be biased because I grew up as a CM Punk fan when he was first getting started in the WWE? Yes. Am I going to be biased because they played Killswitch Engage and they played This Fire Burns in the promo package, which got a huge pop, by the way, and fans were singing CM Punk's theme song at Allegiant Stadium? Yes. But I will say, as a wrestling fan, that I did get emotional watching the hype video for CM Punk. And when he said that my addiction is professional wrestling, goosebumps. That definitely got me chills seeing that live for CM Punk. Because yes, he is straight edge. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't drink alcohol. But yes, professional wrestling is his addiction. So after the amazing presentation at Allegiant Stadium to start out the match, the freaking half hour of wrestling that was on display. This was a masterclass in storytelling when it came to wrestling. There was so much that happened in this match. There was counter after counter. There was hold after hold. There was, all of the terminology and all of the mental storytelling that went into this match. Now, I'm not Dave Meltzer, nor would I ever want to be Dave Meltzer, but if I was ever going to give a match of the night in WrestleMania, it was Rollins, Punk, and Reigns. This was one of the best matches that I have seen in wrestling over the last couple of years. And this was one of my favorite matches that I'm happy to say that I got to see live. And when it comes to WWE, I like the fact that you saw a spear go into a GTS, or you would see a GTS go into a curb stomp, or you would see a stomp and then eventually a pedigree a few seconds later. Seth Rollins trying a Phoenix Splash, he would miss, and then you would see a spear, and then there was even a sequence where CM Punk had someone up for the GTS. Roman Reigns would hit Punk with a spear, and then since Rollins was not hit with a GTS, he then curb stomped Roman Reigns immediately afterwards. And then there was even a segment where CM Punk GTS, and then Seth Rollins would hit a pedigree, and then immediately afterwards pedigree into a spear. And this was an amazing main event. But the final moments of main event night one is what everyone's going to talk about. Paul Heyman, a WWE Hall of Famer, arguably one of the greatest managers of all time. Respect Bobby Heenan, by the way. But when it comes to Paul Heyman, one of the greatest to ever do it. Best friends with CM Punk, the wise man to Roman Reigns. He grabs a steel chair. And the audience was fully into this match. There wasn't, any sighs. There wasn't any like, oh, let me take a snooze break. Let me go and grab a snack. Let me grab a drink. No, everybody was watching the end of this match. And Roman Reigns is down. Seth Rollins is down. CM Punk is down. And when Paul Heyman grabs a steel chair, Punk is to the left. Roman Reigns is to the right. And Paul Heyman has the steel chair. He looks at Roman Reigns. He shakes his head no, and he gives it to CM Punk. CM Punk grabs a steel chair. Paul Heyman gets in the ring. And as Paul Heyman and CM Punk raises the chair over his head. Paul Heyman, in the plums, low blow. CM Punk is out. He is done. Roman Reigns is smiling. He's laughing because his wise man, I'm the tribal chief. Paul Heyman is saying that, hey, you're my tribal chief, and he's pointing at Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is slowly getting up from the ropes. And what does Roman Reigns do? He's smiling. He's happy. He's going to get retribution. He's going to hit Seth Rollins with the chair. Low blow in the plums. And that's right. Paul Heyman didn't just screw over CM Punk. He screwed over Roman Reigns. And what I found interesting is that Seth Rollins, he does his chair. He's hitting Roman Reigns. And for PTSD, I would say Roman Reigns arguably has PTSD from what Seth Rollins did to him. And Seth Rollins, he wins the match. He wins night one of WrestleMania 41. And it kind of ends it with Seth Rollins with a steel chair, Paul Heyman by his side, walking up the ramp. And I know that diehard wrestling fans, if you're someone who watches every single week, you probably did see this coming. But for somebody who has been a casual wrestling fan, who goes to, events here and there in Las Vegas, this was a shocking move, and this was a storytelling masterclass of WrestleMania. But I just wanted to very quickly cover night one here at WrestleMania and at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas, having the privilege of watching it live. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.